Hey everybody, great to be learning with you today as we continue our studies of Sefer Yehoshua and begin the 6th chapter where we'll learn how the Jewish people conquered Jericho. So you'll recall that in the 4th and 5th chapters we learned about the miraculous crossing of the Yarden, the Jordan River, and now the Jewish people have made their way across that river and are about to enter Israel proper, and the first city that they will come across is Jericho, which you see there in the center of your screen. Now, Jericho was a very important city because it was the very first time the Jewish people would actually begin conquest of Eretz Yisrael, to begin their campaign to conquer the land of Israel as promised to them. And Jericho sat just to the western side of the Yarden River, making it the first stop on their way into Eretz Yisrael. Here's a picture of modern-day Jericho. It's a vibrant and industrial town in Israel today. It has all the trappings of a major city, except that thousands of years ago, it was the site of one of the most miraculous events in all of Jewish history. The story might be familiar to you, but we'll go into some details in class. The Jewish people did not conquer Jericho through a military campaign, rather through a miracle. And we'll discuss that in just a moment. But what Yehoshua was told to do in this Perek is to assemble the nation in a military formation, as if the nation was going to go in and conquer the land with military force. And here's what it looked like. The Aron, which we've learned about and discussed previously, was in the center of this formation, as you can see, and it was carried by the Kohanim. You'll remember that the Kohanim carried the Aron into the Yarden, and they are still the ones who are carrying the Aron now. In front of the Kohanim, in that green arc, were 7 Kohanim holding shofarot, and in front of them were the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Remember, Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh did not want to enter Eretz Yisrael and live there permanently. They wanted to stay on the eastern side of the Yarden, but they promised to help Bnei Yisrael conquer the lands before moving back over to the eastern side of the Jordan. And so here they are now, up in front, ready to fight for Bnei Yisrael and keep their promise and honor their word. And in the back of the military campaign, you have the rest of the nation, some of whom were holding shofarot. So this is what it looked like. Kohanim in the middle, some Kohanim in front of them, the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh in front, and the rest of the nation in the rear. And for 6 days, this formation would walk around the walled city of Jericho. Jericho was a very strategic city. It had a huge outer wall around it, and it was not easy to conquer. And the people of Jericho specifically built that wall to prevent people from attacking them. And so every day, the Jewish people would circle the city. First on Sunday, and then on Monday, and then on Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And on Shabbat, they didn't just circle it once, as they did on the previous 6 days. They circled it 7 times. And in class, we'll discuss a little bit about what was the significance of that number. But on Shabbat, on that 7th day of circling the city, as the Kohanim and the rest of the nation blew shofarot as they circled the city, miraculously, the walls of Jericho, which surrounded the city, came tumbling down, allowing the people to enter the city and take it over without using any kind of military force. Now, this miracle, this unbelievable event in Jewish history, raises some very important questions that we'll have to study together in class. And here are some of them. One of the things that we need to learn about is something that happens right after the Jewish people conquer the city. So they are not supposed to take any of the spoils, any of the property from that city. Normally, when you conquer a city in war, the people who conquer the city, the victors, are allowed to take the spoils. Spoils referring to the assets or the belongings of the city, but not here. The Navi is very clear. Hashem told Yehoshua several times to tell Bnei Israel that Bnei Israel were not to take from any of the spoils of the city, and we'll have to see why that is. But more importantly, why did the Jews need a miracle to conquer Jericho? This would be one of the only times, if not the only time, that the Jewish people needed a miracle in their military campaign. When they conquered all the other cities in Eretz Yisrael, as we'll learn about in later prakim, in later chapters, there was no miracle. It was a military campaign, like any other. And yet for Yericho, we needed a miracle to conquer the city. Why? And finally, why were the Jews allowed to fight on Shabbat? Typically, there are very specific laws about what you can and cannot do on Shabbat, and one of the things you cannot do is blow a shofar. You may remember from our studies on Rosh Hashanah that we do not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah when it falls on Shabbat. So why were the Jewish people allowed to do that here? Those are some of the questions that we'll discuss when we return to class. Looking forward to continuing the conversation with you when we return.